Jim Cunningham. I live in Silicon Valley, California. Many consider this area to be the high-tech capital of America. I want to talk to you about jobs, about employment. I have good news and bad news. First, the good news. Towards the end of this talk, I'm going to tell you about an easy way our country could create millions of new jobs. A simple program that could return full employment to our country. A program that would cost the government nothing. Sound good? Keep watching. I'm also going to discuss what the Republicans and the Democrats are proposing for job formation. And I will try to decide if their programs, their positions will actually help. As if you didn't already know. So, how do we arrive at a solution to the jobs problem? First, we need to understand why we have a problem. Understand what went wrong. And I'll do my best to make this clear to you. Then we need to figure out what programs might actually be created that would actually help business and industry. What can be done to really turn on hiring? Okay, again, in a few minutes, I will detail a plan, but I can tell you right now, it will not be lowering of individual tax rates, nor more stimulus spending, nor simply taxing the rich, nor liquidating the government, nor rapidly paying off our public debts, nor increasing the rate of innovation, nor firing the Federal Reserve, nor simply getting out of our wars, although man, I would love for that one, to see that one. But first, we need solid facts. Solid, irrefutable economic data. We don't want to guess at this. This is readily available to anyone with access to the internet. It's available to anyone who takes the time to look it up. Data from the following impeccable sources. This is what I use in my analysis. I use these data to discover trends, to make clear where we have been and suggest where we are headed. These are the sources of my information, of these critical data. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Census Bureau, the IRS, the Federal Reserve Board. Okay, now let's discuss the bad news. Again, as if you didn't already know, there's been a tragic economic downturn that many believe rivals the Great Depression. Consider what's happened to the gross domestic product, or the GDP. This is the most broadly accepted measure of economic activity and economic health. The GDP turned sharply down in 2008, and it has not recovered. Is this a big deal? I think it probably is. This has never happened in my lifetime. In this chart, the GDP data are corrected for inflation. This makes the graph more realistic. And by the way, the charts, all the charts you will see as we move along, are data plotted against time. Again, the objective is to reveal trends. The American people are, of course, really worried about our country, our economy, and about our terrible loss of jobs. Our faith in government is at historical lows, according to a recent Gallup poll. More than 8 in 10 are dissatisfied with the way the nation is being governed. Okay, what are some of the effects of the downturn? I have a short list. We have over 20 million people who would like a job but cannot find one. That's one person in every 6. There are 44.2 million Americans on food stamps, by far an all-time high. In August 2011, there were 7.5 million people drawing unemployment benefits. Last year, the number hit 12 million. Okay, can the government help? Some people pretty much given up. I must admit, however, the president looks great here, and he is wonderfully articulate. Nevertheless, taking it as a whole, the government is near dysfunctional, confused, disorganized. They reverting often to trite political platitudes. The two political parties seem completely polarized. They're at each other's throats. Worse, even if they could agree regarding some kind of a program for jobs, they don't seem to have a clue about what to do. And seemingly beset with uncertainty, President Obama oscillates from wimp to tiger. In my long life, I have never seen anything like it. Completely ignoring the basic causes, that is, the causes of the downturn, the Democrats simply want to spend lots of government money. Stimulate the economy, they say. They always using that term, stimulate. It's not going to work. If you don't work on the causes, when the new money is exhausted, we'll go right back to where we were. Such a stimulus is like pushing down the accelerator on your car. You speed up, but when you lift your foot or the money runs out, you slow right back down to where you were before. The Republicans want to cut taxes. They're always talking about cutting taxes, and they want to reduce the government's influence. They apparently don't realize that the two basic reasons we are in trouble did not arise from government policy, but rather from private sector behavior. Let's look at the two main causative factors. One, the financial meltdown, and two, the shrinking of domestic manufacturing. The financial collapse of 2008 was created by essentially private financial institutions who bet the farm that home prices would rise forever. So went their thinking. If the loan ever goes into default, oh, so what? It doesn't really matter. We simply sell the house and we make a profit, and we'll get another fee. It didn't work, as everybody knows. The game blew up, and contributing to the horrendous financial collapse of 2008 was a 30-year period of easy money and growing debt. This graph shows the total borrowing, both government and private. And following the early 1980s, it really took off. And the Republicans are correct in saying the government has been too easy with money, especially since about 1980. Past about 1980, we borrowed astonishing amounts of money. Not just loans for easy mortgages. We maxed out our credit cards, the states covered their deficits, and corporations borrowed and built swank digs for their people. By the mid-2000s, it reached truly amazing levels. Look at 2007 on a chart. We hit over $4 trillion in that 1 year. Talk about a Keynesian stimulus. This easy money fed the economy, producing many, many millions of jobs. It kept the pedal to the metal. That is, as long as it kept coming. Unlike what most people think, most of the borrowings was from the private sector, not the government. That yawning gap in this graph between the top red line for the total debt and the blue line for the federal debt is the private contribution. Using $400,000 per job, the justification of which I will spare you, the theoretical number of jobs generated is shown here, generated by the borrowing. The numbers are huge. Over 10 million in 2007, just before the bubble popped. The key point here is that so much easy money was created, so many jobs were created that nobody really noticed our shrinking base of manufacturing. They didn't notice it, at least until today. Look at the peak of the curve. The new money shuts off, and it did, and that should kill over 10 million jobs. That's exactly what happened. Let's address the Republicans' tax cut gambit before proceeding anymore. It's not a viable idea. There have been many studies to demonstrate this. I'll give you only one. It's a good one. Let's look at tax collections around the world and see how that works. This data looks at the effect of tax collections on a country's GDP. The graph has over 50 points of data from countries all around the world. It's a plot of per capita GDP against the tax revenues that
come in as a percent of GDP. The red line is a computer fit of the data. Look at that guy, it's dead flat. The tax rates are obviously varying widely across the many nations, but the varying rates, at least statistically, they have no effect on the country's economies. This is easy to understand. The political right may hate it, but the redistribution of wealth, within limits of course, has little or no effect on the GDP. This is because when the government taxes your earnings and they take your money, they immediately spend it. They don't save anything. They spend it maybe even faster than you might. And this money goes right back into the economy. Our government even pads it with borrowed funds, and they spend that too. The Republicans' game is to campaign for lower taxes in order to get votes, not jobs. It seems to work pretty well for them, but sorry, it's so obviously disingenuous. Our government rarely funds long-term projects like the high-speed train shown here. Just look at the okay, what about the other 500-pound gorilla in the room? Our love affair with an unfettered free market has resulted in a never-ending transfer and shrinkage of domestic manufacturing to foreign countries, with its attendant loss of factory jobs and a drying up of our nation's middle class. Industries hit hard are many. They include automobiles, consumer electronics, communication devices, apparel, furniture, tools, appliances, fixtures, and so forth and so on. Since about 1980, the country has lost directly about 7 million jobs in manufacturing. However, since manufacturing requires necessary support and supply functions, many from small companies, the total loss is at least 14 million. Some argue it's higher than that. Some say it's over 20 million. Just look at the sad situation with domestic manufacturing shown in this chart, the black data points. The number of workers is and still is and is headed straight down. They have dropped in numbers since 1950 by a factor of almost 4 times. It's terrible. This chart for the manufacturing employment as a percent of the non-farm workforce suggests that when extended to zero, that we will have no manufacturing at all sometime in the year 2030. Unbelievable. Other areas in the service economy look okay. However, these trends shown here in general overall cannot be sustained. The trade deficit, already huge, would eat us alive. Some on the right, far right, argue this trend is simply due to automation or from increases in productivity. It's not. Manufacturing revenues have also plummeted. Looking at our domestic manufacturing sales shows a similar horror story. Again, according to the computer extrapolation I have here, we crap out completely sometime in the 2030s or 40s. The loss of domestic manufacturing created, of course, a massive trade deficit, which took off like a lot of other stuff in our economy in the early 1980s. Of course, this one is negative and it roars off in the opposite direction. That is the wrong direction. In the 2000s decade, it was bouncing around in the $500 billion range. Now, it's paid for mostly with debt. It's still with us, and it is and was a major contributor to the perfect storm of 2008. The primary contributors today to the loss of domestic manufacturing are the multinational corporations, those who do manufacturing. Companies like Hewlett-Packard, Apple, Dell Computer, and to some extent General Electric, and many, many others. These are companies who either contract manufacturing from low cost of labor venues such as those in China, or they set up foreign affiliates foreign affiliate factories to make their products. These multinationals, they love the present free market. They make their stuff at lower cost and they gain more access to world markets. Sales and profits rise. The CEOs get unbelievably rich. They have no incentives, zero, to change anything. The government can just stay away, leave them alone. Most multinationals take the attitude that if they can't automate the making of a product, then get it done in China. If an operation has a high labor content, then they get rid of it. This is why the only manufacturing left in the U.S. are chemicals, plastic refineries, and so forth, operations that are readily, easily automated. This is why the new America generates in government stimulus doesn't work, produces few jobs. If the demand rises, most new jobs end up in China, not here. Between 1999 and 2009, that 10-year period, large multinational corporations paired 2.9, almost 3 million workers from their U.S. payrolls, while adding 2.4 million jobs at their foreign affiliates. The multinationals got some kind of offshore fever or something around the year 2000. I don't know what happened, but here's a graph showing American-based companies and their percent of overseas employees. Past the year 2000, the data goes straight up like a Saturn rocket. They don't need us anymore. Okay, let's talk about some solutions to this problem. Let's create some really strong incentives to build factories here. Let's make tax rates for the value added at home for factories at home 0%, and make it say 35% at any foreign venue. The value added is simply the profit, not including the cost of materials and purchase components. Now, this idea is not a tariff. Remember, it's not a tariff. And such a policy would apply only to manufacturing companies who compete globally. We might also let manufacturers repatriate their foreign-held dollars at zero tax rate if they'll build a factory at home. And to compensate for this, let's rescind the Bush tax cuts for individuals and really slash defense.
Hey, that's the plan. You think maybe it'll work? I did a little exercise to check it out. I studied Apple's December 2009 quarterly income statement. Turns out if they moved all manufacturing back home from China and raised factory wages by a factor of 10, which they would probably have to do, the new lower tax rate would bring in almost $1 billion new dollars, additional dollars, in one quarter. Now that's an incentive to create some jobs at home. Republicans campaign on that one and I'll vote for you. Thanks very much for listening. If you would like to know more in detail about all these considerations and analysis, I invite you to look at this site, Restoring Balance to the United States Economy, done in February 2010. Okay, thanks again.